Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something fundamental, something deeply woven into the male psyche, yet often misunderstood. Why do men stay silent even when they desire someone intensely? Now, if you look at this psychologically and historically, men have been shaped by evolutionary pressures that demand restraint. A man who recklessly expresses his emotions, without strategy, without control, risks rejection, humiliation, and loss of status. And status, well, that's not just about power or dominance, it's about competence, about being someone of value, someone worthy of admiration. Men have been conditioned, both biologically and culturally, to be cautious with their emotions. From a young age, boys learn that vulnerability can be dangerous. If you reveal too much, especially feelings of deep desire, you open yourself up to rejection. And rejection, for a man, is not just a passing inconvenience. It is a deep wound to the sense of self. Men are conditioned from a very young age to restrain their emotions. This isn't arbitrary, and it isn't merely cultural, it's deeply biological. If you observe boys growing up, you'll notice something fascinating. They learn very quickly that open displays of vulnerability are met with consequences, some subtle, some severe. A boy who cries too often is ridiculed by his peers. A boy who expresses too much neediness is ignored. A boy who lacks composure in competitive environments is swiftly outmatched. These are not trivial lessons. They are profound and shape the way men interact with the world for the rest of their lives. This process isn't about oppression, and it certainly isn't about some cruel conspiracy to suppress men's emotions. It's about adaptation. It's about survival. Human beings, particularly males, have evolved in dominance hierarchies where emotional regulation is a necessity. If you were a hunter in a small tribal community and you constantly displayed insecurity, doubt, or uncontrolled emotions, you risked losing your place in the group. And to lose your place, well, that was often synonymous with death. Even in today's world, the principle remains the same. Men who cannot regulate their emotions, who cannot maintain a certain level of composure, are far less likely to succeed in competitive environments, whether in the workplace, in social settings, or in romantic pursuits. And here's where desire becomes particularly dangerous for men. It's one thing to want something casually, to think, that would be nice. But deep desire, the kind that keeps a man up at night, that grips his thoughts, that makes him feel as though his entire world is at stake, this is something else entirely. When a man wants someone badly, he is not just confronting his own emotions, he is confronting risk. If he expresses his feelings too openly and too soon, he exposes himself to rejection, to humiliation, to the possibility of being seen as weak. And in a man's world, weakness is not tolerated kindly. This isn't to say that men shouldn't express their emotions. It's that they must do so with control, with precision, and at the right time. A man who blurts out his deepest feelings without consideration often finds himself dismissed. Why? Because emotion without strength is chaos. Women, whether consciously or unconsciously, respond not just to a man's words, but to the stability behind them. If a man expresses his feelings from a place of desperation rather than a place of self-assurance, the reaction is very different. And men know this, even if they can't always articulate it. There is also an element of shame attached to male vulnerability, particularly in the realm of romance. A man who expresses desire without first proving his worth feels as though he is stepping out of line. He feels as though he is asking for something he has not yet earned. This is a deeply ingrained psychological reality. In virtually every culture, men have historically been the ones who must prove themselves before they are deemed worthy of affection. A woman's value, in many ways, has been tied to her ability to attract. A man's value, however, has been tied to his ability to provide, to build, to conquer. And so, a man who speaks too soon before he has demonstrated his competence feels as though he is violating some unspoken rule of nature. This is why many men, even when they desperately want someone, will hold back. It is not that they do not feel. It is not that they do not suffer in their silence. It is that the very structure of male psychology has been shaped to ensure that expression follows achievement, not the other way around. You see this in every area of life. A man does not celebrate before he wins. He does not claim victory before he has earned it. He does not ask for respect before proving himself. And in the realm of attraction, the same principle applies. And so men learn restraint. They learn it in school when they face their first rejections. They learn it in competition when they see that effort alone is not enough, that they must win. They learn it in the workplace when they realize that no one rewards complaints, only results. And they learn it in relationships where the wrong move, the wrong word, the wrong display of emotion at the wrong time can mean the difference between connection and isolation. This isn't to say that men do not long for connection. In fact, it is precisely because they long for it so deeply that they are careful with it. A man who wants something with all his heart does not take reckless action. He waits, he strategizes, he ensures that when he does act, it is with strength, not with desperation. Men are not reckless creatures when it comes to desire. If anything, they are the opposite. They are restrained, often to the point of seeming indifferent, not because they lack feeling, but because they understand, either consciously or unconsciously, that the game of attraction is not simply about emotion. It is about strategy, about survival, about proving oneself worthy before making a move. And this isn't arbitrary. It's wired into the very fabric of human history. If you look at evolutionary biology, you see a pattern emerge. In virtually every species, males must compete for female attention. The strongest, the most competent, the most resourceful, these are the ones who succeed. And by success, I don't simply mean momentary attraction. I mean the ability to secure a mate, to build something lasting, to ensure the survival of one's lineage. This is not just about romance. It is about biological continuity, and men, whether they are aware of it or not, have inherited the instincts that govern this reality. What this means is that men do not approach desire the same way women do. A woman, by virtue of her biology, is the one who selects. She evaluates, she filters, she determines who is worthy and who is not. A man, on the other hand, must position himself to be chosen. And to do this, he must demonstrate value before he reveals vulnerability. This is why caution is ingrained in the male psyche. It is why men do not simply rush forward the moment they feel something. They wait, they build, they ensure that when they do step forward, they are not doing so from a place of weakness, but from a place of undeniable strength. This principle is not just theoretical. You see it play out in every culture, in every era. The warriors, the hunters, the leaders, these are the men who commanded attention, not because they pleaded for it, but because they earned it. In traditional societies, a man was not granted the right to express his desires unless he had first proven his craft. He had to master his craft, accumulate resources, demonstrate his ability to provide. Only then was he taken seriously as a potential partner. And while society has changed, human nature has not. The same rules apply today, even if they manifest in subtler ways. You can observe this in the modern dating world. A man who expresses his feelings too soon before he has demonstrated his value is often met with rejection. Not because women are cruel or shallow, but because they are biologically wired to seek competence and stability in a partner. And so men learn through trial and error that timing is everything. They learn that desire alone is not enough. That if they want to be successful, they must be strategic. They must restrain themselves until they are certain that their position is strong. This is not deception, it is discipline. It is the same principle that governs all forms of success. A man does not walk into a job interview and say, "I really, really want this job," expecting that his desire alone will earn him a position. He must first demonstrate his skills, his knowledge, his ability to contribute. Only then does his desire carry weight. The same applies to relationships. A man who expresses his feelings without first proving his worth is gambling, and men, especially those who have experienced failure, are not eager to take that risk. There is also the matter of social hierarchy. Whether we like it or not, men exist within a competitive framework. They are constantly measuring themselves against other men. And in this framework, emotional restraint is often equated with strength. A man who is too eager, too emotional, too quick to expose his vulnerabilities is perceived as less dominant. He risks losing not only the interest of the woman he desires, but also the respect of his peers. And respect for a man is not a trivial thing. It is the foundation of his social and professional success. This is why many men choose silence, even in the presence of overwhelming emotion. They are not indifferent, they are calculating. They are ensuring that when they do speak, they do so from a position of strength, not from a position of need. Because the moment a man becomes needy, he loses power, not just in the eyes of others, but in his own eyes. And when a man loses faith in himself, he becomes ineffective in every aspect of his life. And so men wait, they hold back, they ensure that their actions align with their aspirations, not because they do not care, but because they care so much that they refuse to risk everything on a premature confession. It's a mistake to assume that silence is the absence of emotion. Silence, in many cases, is a form of discipline. It is an expression of control of a man's capacity to regulate his emotions in a way that aligns with his broader goals. Because here's something fundamental about human nature. Emotion by itself is not enough. Feelings are powerful, yes, but feelings without structure, without action, without a foundation of strength, are chaotic. And men, at least those who are competent, those who are aware of what is at stake, do not operate well in chaos. They seek order, they seek strategy, they seek a way of being that allows them to move toward what they want without undermining themselves in the process. And that's the problem with raw emotional expression. It has to be timed correctly. It has to be backed by something meaningful. If a man simply spills his emotions without any control, without any thought, what does he become? He becomes weak. And weakness, in a world that demands competence, is not rewarded. A man who lacks discipline over his emotions is not taken seriously. His words lose their weight. His presence loses its impact. And the worst part? He knows it. He knows that if he gives in too soon, if he allows himself to be consumed by the depth of his feelings without first ensuring he is standing on solid ground, he will likely regret it. And so what does he do? He holds back, not because he doesn't care, not because he lacks the desire to express himself, but because he understands that there is a time and a place for everything. A man who has mastered himself knows that his emotions must be harnessed, not unleashed recklessly. He knows that restraint is not the same as repression. Repression is avoidance, an inability to confront one's own emotions. Restraint, on the other hand, is something entirely different. It is a form of self-respect. It is the ability to acknowledge one's emotions without allowing them to dictate impulsive action. This is why some of the most capable men you meet are also the most measured in their approach to relationships. They do not rush forward with words they cannot take back. They do not allow their desire to override their sense of self. They understand that attraction is not just about feeling, it is about perception, about status, about the way they carry themselves in the world. Because here's the brutal reality: people respond to strength. They are drawn to those who have command over their own emotions, who do not crumble under the weight of their own longing. And so a man who wants to be taken seriously ensures that his emotions serve him rather than control him. And this is not just a cultural phenomenon, it is biological. If you observe nature, you will see that the strongest males in a given species are rarely the ones who act impulsively. They are the ones who demonstrate patience, who calculate their moves, who understand that reckless displays of emotion often signal desperation rather than competence. A lion does not roar constantly to assert his dominance. He roars when it matters. A wolf does not whimper to show his strength. He stands his ground until the moment to act is undeniable. Human beings, despite all our complexity, are not so different. The men who succeed in relationships, in business, in leadership, are the ones who do not let their emotions run unchecked. And there is something admirable about this, because restraint, true restraint, is difficult. It requires a man to battle with himself. to resist the urge to seek immediate gratification in favor of something greater. It requires him to endure moments of doubt, to suffer through the tension of unexpressed desire, all for the sake of ensuring that when he does act, it is with certainty. And certainty, well, that is a rare thing. Certainty is what separates those who are truly confident from those who are merely impulsive. Certainty is what allows a man to step forward with conviction rather than hesitation. So when a man remains silent, even in the presence of overwhelming emotion, it is not because he lacks feeling, it is because he understands at a fundamental level that desire must be tempered by strength, that longing, no matter how intense, does not justify recklessness, that the ability to hold back, to wait, to ensure that emotion is expressed with purpose rather than desperation, is what ultimately allows him to be taken seriously. If a man wants something badly enough, he becomes careful. That's the paradox of desire. The more something matters, the higher the stakes, the more reluctant he is to act impulsively. And this isn't cowardice, it's calculation. It's an attempt to avoid unnecessary suffering, to minimize the risk of loss, to ensure that when he does act, it is with the highest probability of success. Because for men, failure in the domain of attraction is not just a momentary setback. It is a fundamental blow to their self-concept, to their sense of competence, to their very ability to engage with the world effectively. And so men become hesitant, not because they lack confidence, but because they understand, at least on an intuitive level, that the cost of rejection is not merely emotional pain, it is an existential wound, a direct challenge to their ability to be chosen, to be valued, to be seen as worthy. And this is not just some modern psychological construct, it is something deeply ingrained in human history. For millennia, men have been the ones who must prove themselves before they are accepted. They have been the ones who must demonstrate value before they are considered desirable. And this is not arbitrary, it is biological. It is embedded in the very structure of human mating dynamics. A woman, by virtue of her reproductive capacity, has always had the power of selection. She is the one who chooses, who filters, who decides which men are worthy of her attention. A man, on the other hand, is the one who must compete. And competition, real competition, is not about reckless action. It is about strategy. It is about knowing when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent. A man who acts too soon without proper calculation risks everything. And men, especially those who have experienced failure, are deeply aware of this fact. This is why the fear of losing what they desire most paralyzes so many men. It is not just about the immediate rejection, it is about what that rejection represents. Because here's the brutal truth. When a man is rejected, it is not just his feelings that are wounded. It is his entire sense of competence. It is his ability to navigate the world effectively. It is his belief in his own worth. And men, more than anything else, need to feel. A man who feels incompetent, who feels as though he is not capable, not desirable, not respected, is a man who quickly descends into resentment, into nihilism, into a state of profound disengagement from life itself. This is why men who want something badly are often the most silent. The risk is too great. The fear of misstepping, of saying the wrong thing, of revealing their emotions too soon is overwhelming. And this isn't because they are weak. It is because they understand, whether consciously or unconsciously, that attraction is not something that can be forced. It must be earned. It must be cultivated. And if a man speaks his desires before he has established his value, before he has proven himself worthy, he risks being dismissed outright. So what does he do? He waits. He observes. He ensures that when he does act, it is not from a place of desperation, but from a place of strength. And this is something that women often misunderstand. They mistake a man's silence for indifference, when in reality, it is often the exact opposite. It is a sign that he cares too much, that he is afraid of losing something that matters, that he is unwilling to take a reckless gamble with something as important as his own self-respect. And this isn't just about relationships, this is about life. The most successful men in any domain are the ones who understand the importance of timing, A businessman does not invest recklessly. A warrior does not attack without strategy. A leader does not make decisions without careful calculation. The same principle applies to attraction. A man who values himself does not throw his emotions around carelessly. He does not beg for attention. He does not place his worth in the hands of another without first ensuring that he is standing on solid ground. Because at the core of all of this is a fundamental truth. Men fear losing what they want most because they know deep down that failure in this domain is not easily forgotten. It lingers. It shapes them. It defines how they see themselves, how they engage with the world, how they move forward. And so they remain silent, not because they do not feel, but because they feel too much. Not because they lack courage, but because they understand that courage is not recklessness. It is the ability to act with precision, with discipline, with an awareness of what is truly at stake. There's something deeply paradoxical about male psychology when it comes to attraction. The very thing that compels a man to pursue someone, a deep and profound admiration, is also the thing that often holds him back. And this isn't because he lacks interest, it's because he understands on an almost instinctual level that admiration comes with an inherent hierarchy. You do not admire something that is beneath you. You admire something that you perceive as above you, or at the very least beyond you in some significant way. And the moment you place someone on that kind of pedestal, you introduce a fundamental power imbalance. This is the problem with deep admiration. It creates distance. It makes the object of desire something sacred, something that cannot simply be approached with casual ease. And men, particularly the ones who think deeply, who analyze, who understand the weight of their own emotions, struggle with this. They are caught in a conflict between wanting to reach out and not wanting to shatter the ideal they've built in their minds. And this idealization is not just romantic, it is psychological. It is embedded in the way human beings assign value. If you truly respect something, you do not approach it carelessly. You do not risk losing it through impulsive action. And this is where the hesitation, the silence, the avoidance often stems from. It is not that the man lacks the desire to act. It is that he fears acting in a way that would diminish the significance of what he feels. Because attraction, real attraction, is not just about desire, it is about meaning. And men, whether they articulate it or not, do not want something trivial. They want something meaningful, something that justifies their effort, something that aligns with the highest version of themselves. And this is what makes admiration so dangerous. The more you admire someone, the more you see them as something beyond your grasp. The more you hesitate, the more you analyze, the more you try to find a way to engage without compromising the respect that fueled the admiration in the first place. And this creates paralysis. It turns a simple human connection into an existential dilemma. And this isn't just an individual phenomenon, it is something embedded in the male psyche at a societal level. Throughout history, men have been the ones who must rise to meet a standard. They are the ones who must prove themselves before they can be taken seriously, whether in competition, in leadership, in war, or in romance. Women, by contrast, have been the selectors. They have always had the power to choose. And so, for a man, admiration is not just an emotion, it is a signal. A signal that he must elevate himself, that he must become worthy, that he must ensure that his approach does not betray weakness, uncertainty, or desperation. And here's where the real problem emerges. The more a man admires, the more he believes he is not yet ready. The more he convinces himself that there is more work to do, that he must refine himself further, that he must reach a point where he is no longer intimidated by what he desires. But the reality is that point rarely comes, because admiration by its very nature creates distance. It turns the person into an ideal, and ideals are not easily approached. This is why some of the most disciplined, thoughtful, and capable men struggle the most when it comes to expressing their feelings. They are not hesitant because they lack courage. They are hesitant because they do not want to risk tarnishing something they hold in high regard. And this is tragic in a sense, because what often happens is that by By overanalyzing, by fearing the loss of something that has not even been gained, the opportunity slips away entirely. The very thing that could have been meaningful is lost, not because it was unattainable, but because it was placed on such a high pedestal that it became untouchable. And this is the challenge that men face. How do you act decisively without undermining the significance of what you feel? How do you step forward without eroding the very admiration that made the pursuit worthwhile in the first place? The answer is not simple. But what is clear is that hesitation, while understandable, often leads to regret. And regret, well, that is something far more painful than rejection.